What you have to realize is that all of the results you have right now are the results of the habits that you have right now, because you are your habits. You are not your hopes and dreams, your aspirations. Who you are today, what you have today, is a direct outcome, a direct result of the daily habits that you do every day. So I want to spend some time talking about this because it is so fundamental for your success, so that you can not only get success, but actually keep it. I have seen a lot of people come through the Unhooked Academy, and everyone gets the same system. They get the same support. They go through the same process. So why do some people see success and some don't? A lot of it comes down to your habits. So I want you to do this exercise today. I want you to take some time to identify what are your hooked habits so that you can start to let go of them. Because who you are today, again, is a result of your habits. If you are keeping these hooked habits in your life, it is going to be very hard to have long-term lasting freedom from your addiction. So I've written down a bit of a list. These are in no particular order, just some of the things that came to me, some of the things I've seen of what are some of the hooked habits that people have that keep them stuck in their addiction. And then also, what are the unhooked habits? What are the parallels to this, or the polar opposites in some way, the things you can do to actually find freedom? So starting off, what are your hooked habits? The first one is if you are someone who uses porn, junk food, or screens as an escape from stress or loneliness. So, this is probably the most obvious one. But some of the things that will be keeping you hooked in your addiction is if you are running away from stress, loneliness, difficult emotions, and using things like pornography, junk food, screen time, digital distractions, video games as a way to escape those negative feelings. Running away from discomfort, running away from stress or loneliness is a fast track path to staying stuck in your addiction. So this is probably the most important thing to address, is if you are using these habits and behaviors to numb out, to find an escape, to fill the emptiness inside. This is the thing that I see most often, is people who are unaware that they are using these unhealthy coping mechanisms. So that is probably the biggest hooked habit. Hooked habit number 2 is if you are someone who keeps the phone beside the bed at night. This is another kind of just really obvious one. If you are that type of person that is keeping your phone right next to you in the bed, you wake up in the middle of the night, roll over and start checking your notifications, or you're just staying up late, scrolling on your phone. It is a huge hooked habit, something to be aware of. And then also, when you have your phone plugged in next to your bed, often what people do is they check it first thing in the morning. They wake up, and before they even get out of bed, before they check in with themselves, they start checking their notifications. This is a huge red flag, and something I see with a lot of people who are stuck in their addiction is that dependency on their phone at all times. They feel like if they are away from their phone, something is wrong. It's like they're missing something that they need. And so that's another thing to look out for. Hooked habit number 3 is the type of person who keeps their relapses a secret. They hide, they isolate, and they pretend that everything is fine. This is another red flag that I see a lot, is the type of guy who slips up, and then rather than owning it, rather than showing up in the community calls and being honest with himself, he wants to keep it a secret. He wants to hide and isolate and run away. And that, again, is going to be a fast track path to addiction. Hooked habit number 4 is if you are the type of person who avoids facing your emotions head on, or worse than that, if you don't even have any awareness of what emotions you're feeling. If you're not even aware that you're angry, you're not even aware that you're feeling lonely, then you definitely can't be facing it head on. But so the people who aren't aware of their emotions, or who don't want to face or confront the difficult emotions that are arising within them. The big ones that I see often, loneliness is one of the biggest. Boredom is another one that triggers acting out. Stress and anxiety, fear, insecurity, all of these things you've got to confront head on if you want to deal with your addiction. So that one of the things that keeps people stuck is running away from these difficult emotions. Hooked habit number 5, he tells himself, I'll start tomorrow. And he tells himself this again and again and again. That is a surefire sign of someone who is hooked, is this procrastination. just saying, yeah, I want to recover, but I'll start next week when I don't have so much work on my plate, or I'll start when I'm feeling better, or all kinds of excuses of putting it off for another day. Number 6, he treats slip-ups as proof of failure rather than feedback. This is a really important one. When you slip up, if you see this as a sign that you are broken, if you see this as proof that you are a failure or flawed, that is going to keep you stuck in the addiction mindset. It's going to keep you stuck in the identity of the addict. Someone who says, I am flawed, I am broken, this is just who I am. But instead, if you see a slip up as data, as a feedback for how you're living, that is a much healthier approach. So hooked habit number 6 is when you treat your slip-ups as proof of failure. That is a mindset that you have got to get out of. Number 7, thinks motivation should be enough, no system, no plan. If you are the type of person that is putting all your eggs in one basket, which is the basket of motivation, feeling amped up and hyped and thinking, yeah, I'm going to do this and I just need to get motivated, you are going to fail. If you do not have a system, if you don't have a plan in place, then you are just reliant on whether or not the winds of motivation are there with you in any given day, which sometimes they are. Sometimes you wake up feeling motivated and sometimes you're not motivated. Sometimes you feel like shit. Sometimes you're down on yourself and don't have the motivation. And that's where you need a system or a plan in place to keep you on track. So that is another hooked habit to look out for, is just relying on motivation and thinking that that should be enough to achieve all your goals. Hooked habit number 8, follows triggering thirst trap accounts on social media. This is an obvious one and it's a doozy, but some of you out there listening or watching this might be guilty of this, is you want to recover from porn. You want to live a life of freedom and integrity and discipline and all these things. And you are following these thirst trap accounts without even realizing it. It's like pouring poison on your brain and keeping yourself stuck in that addiction. There is no point to following those accounts. They're just garbage. It literally is just letting people throw garbage into your front lawn every day. So following thirst traps, following, accounts that just trigger you and don't provide any value, it's just stupid. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And so you've got to unfollow those accounts as soon as you can. Hooked habit number 9 is the guy who never asks for help or support, or thinks that asking for help or support is a sign of weakness. So this is something I do see often, and it's something that we're all guilty of because it's difficult. It's difficult to admit when you need help. It's difficult to ask for support, to be vulnerable, because we have been raised in this society that says you shouldn't show your weakness and you shouldn't admit that anything's wrong and you should do it yourself, be a lone wolf, be independent. But that is one of the things that will keep you locked in your hooked habits, in your addiction. Hooked habit number 10 doesn't have any real accountability except for maybe his partner. This is something I see with a lot of people who I get on discovery calls with, who talk about the journey that they're on with recovery and where they're at. And they say, yeah, I've been trying to quit and my partner knows about it and she's my accountability partner. And, we tried it for a while where she was keeping me accountable and I would check in with her. And aside from maybe that, there's no actual real accountability in his life. And that is a huge thing that you need to address, is if you don't have any real accountability, and when I say real accountability, your partner is not a good accountability buddy. The reason being is that it's not a safe space for you to actually be honest, because there's too much at risk. So many times I've heard guys say, I want to be honest, I want to tell them, but I don't want to hurt her feelings. I would rather take one for the team and lie and have to deal with lying and the pain of that rather than hurting her feelings by telling her I've slipped up again. So that is not a good person to be your accountability. What you need is someone who can call you out. And at the same time, it's a relatively safe space where you don't have to worry about risking the relationship. It's one of the reasons why in the community that I run, that kind of accountability is so important. The community is there to be a place where you can check in with yourself, you can get accountability, but you don't have to worry about, ruining the relationship. You can actually have guys there who call you out and support you and see you. So that is hooked habit number 10, no real accountability except for maybe your partner. Hooked habit number 11 is the type of guy who justifies slips or acting out with excuses like everyone does it, or I deserve it this week because I've been a good boy and I've worked hard. Those kinds of excuses will keep you stuck in a mediocre life. They will keep you stuck in not reaching your full potential, in just not becoming the best version of yourself. So if you notice that you are making these excuses in your mind, everybody does it. What's the big deal? It's just porn. I'm not harming anyone. Or, I've been so good this week. I had a stressful week at work and I made it through, so I deserve this. Those are the voices of the saboteur. They are not the voices of your higher self. So you've got to get rid of that habit of letting the saboteur decide your actions. Hooked habit number 12. He avoids difficult conversations or emotional vulnerability. If you notice that you are avoiding any kind of confrontation, any kind of real difficult conversation with the people in your life who matter to you, any kind of vulnerability and being honest with yourself and your loved ones, that is going to have downstream consequences of keeping you locked in addiction. Because when you're out of integrity with that, when you're not being honest with your loved ones, when you're not speaking up when you need to speak up and confronting someone when they need to be confronted, or just addressing maybe the elephant in the room in your relationship, that is going to lead to you wanting to act out. And so that is another habit to look out for, is if you are avoiding difficult conversations, avoiding confrontation, or not allowing yourself to be vulnerable, to talk about how you're feeling. Hooked habit number 13. Let's one bad day turn into a bad week, and then a bad month, a bad year, and so on. One of the things I see a lot is this sunk cost fallacy, which is, I've slipped up today, therefore the whole week is shot, so I might as well just let myself go this week. And again, I'll get started on Monday. And that, you can use that excuse for anything. I've slipped up this minute, so I might as well slip up for the rest of the day. I've slipped up this week, so, this month is gone. And again, you can keep putting things off again and again and again, and using this as an excuse. At some point, you just have to cut the thread and say, enough is enough. Yeah, I acted out, but I'm not going to use that as an excuse to continue acting out. Hooked habit number 14, blames external factors, work, partner, stress for behavior. Giving away your power, blaming other people, blaming situations and circumstances, not taking full ownership of your life is something that will keep you stuck in addiction. It is something that is going to keep you stuck in that mediocre life. And so part of it is taking ownership of your life. Hooked habit number 15. Measures progress only by streaks instead of by overall growth. This is something that a lot of us do, which was we get so focused on one metric. For example, in weight loss, if you're looking to lose weight and change your body fat composition, all this, you can get so hyper focused on the number on the scale and just say, it's got to go down, it's got to go down. And you might be missing all these other signs of progress in your life. The fact that you're building muscle, you have more stamina, you have more energy, you have more endurance, you feel better, you're sleeping better, all these other metrics that you should be paying attention to about your overall health and fitness. And instead, all you're focused on is some number on a scale. The same is true for your streak. If you are only focused on how many days porn free, that is going to be a recipe for disaster, because if you break it, if you have a slip for some reason, which happens to the best of us, it happens often, particularly with porn, because there's a lot of it out there and it's so accessible. If you feel like, that's all that matters, then when you go back to day 0, it's going to feel like it's all over. When in reality, your relationships might be improving, you're being more honest with your partner, you're exercising more, you're more aware of your emotions and your triggers. You had a slip, it's okay. So the hooked habit here is if you're the type of person that is measuring your progress just by that number on your streak. Hooked habit number 16. If you think that recovery means deprivation rather than expansion, if your overall mindset or mentality towards the process of recovery is, I have to deprive myself of this joy, I have to give up something that makes me happy, that is not going to work, because your attitude towards recovery is going to be this negative attitude, this feeling of, what a pain, what a misery. When the reality is recovery is expansion. It's making more time for what really matters for you. So we got to get out of that mindset that recovery is about deprivation or giving up things that make you happy. It doesn't make you happy. All of you who are listening to this or watching this know that more porn is not going to actually make you happy. more sitting on your ass on the couch eating junk food is not going to make you happy. It's a temporary distraction. It's a temporary escape from pain, but it doesn't lead to actual happiness. The final hooked habit I want to talk about today, hooked habit number 17, is the guy who focuses on perfection instead of progress and then spirals or binges when things aren't perfect. If you are focused on being flawless, on having just the absolute perfect recovery and no slips and, nailing your gym routine and morning routine, and the moment things don't go perfect or the way you planned, then you spiral and binge and say, oh, I missed my meditation, therefore I'm going to eat junk food and watch porn all day. That's going to keep you stuck. And there's flavors of this. It doesn't have to be this kind of crazy, oh my gosh, I missed my morning meditation, so I'm going to eat like a pig and watch porn all day. But the subtle ways that this perfectionism mindset can creep into a lot of us. And it has ripple effects. It might cause you to isolate, to hide, all the ways that it can keep you hooked and keep you in that mediocre life. Now, the flip side of these habits, I'll just go through them quickly, but it's really just the opposites of the ones I already talked about. So the unhooked habits, the things that are going to lead to freedom and integrity. Number one is the guy who faces stress or loneliness or difficult emotions directly. He confronts them head on and looks for ways to connect or heal instead of escaping. When you feel loneliness, when you feel stress, to not say, I'm going to numb out with junk food or porn or screen time. Instead, I'm going to find ways to actually be with these emotions, to process and find healthier coping mechanisms. Unhooked habit number 2, you keep your phone outside of your bedroom. This is such a little one, but it's so important, is to not sleep with that thing next to your bed, because it is a tool that is just so addictive. It's so, it just gets into all of us. And so keeping your phone outside your bedroom, buying an old school alarm clock, starting and ending your day with some kind of presence where you're actually not just glued to your screen, not glued to your notifications, but you have at least a few minutes at the start and end of the day where you are disconnecting from that dopamine machine, that dopamine factory. Unhooked habit number 3, shares openly and honestly about slips instead of hiding in shame. If you can actually have a relapse or slip up and you can show up to a community call and say, hey, I wasn't perfect this week. This is what happened. Here's how I'm going to address it. That is a sign that you are progressing in your recovery and that you are moving in the direction of becoming unhooked. Number 4, feels emotions fully and allows discomfort instead of running from it. This is the same theme we looked at in number 1, but if you can actually be aware of your emotions, oh, I'm feeling stressed. Oh, I'm feeling lonely because I don't have the connections. And I'm not going to run from these. I'm not going to hide. I can actually talk about these things and share about them openly. That's going to lead to success. Number 5 is if you act now, not tomorrow. If you avoid procrastination, always putting it off, but instead say, there's so many guys that come to me, they say, man, I wish I had started this 10 years ago, but the second best time to start it is now. You can always say, man, I wish I started this sooner. I wish I started when I was 20 or 25. That's true. And the second best time to start your recovery is now. It's always now. The next one, number 6, treats slip-ups as feedback, learns, adjusts, and moves forward. If you have a slip-up, the best mindset to approach that slip-up with is to say, hey, this is data. This is feedback. This is showing me a sign of where I'm still hooked on something. This is showing me where, I still have some work to do. So let me use this data to adjust. Let me use this feedback to learn and move forward. Unhooked habit number 7, he builds systems and routines and doesn't wait for motivation to show up. This is something I talked about in the last podcast episode I did around the 4 disciplines of execution, 4DX framework. But relying on motivation is just a fool's errand. It's like saying I want to sail across the ocean and I'm only just going to put up my sail and I'm not going to adjust it. I'm just going to depend on the wind to hopefully blow me in the right direction. I'm not going to use any kind of other systems or tools to make sure that I'm moving in the right direction. It just doesn't work. So you have to build in systems and routines. You have to use behavioral architecture and figure out ways to support your recovery beyond just relying on motivation. That's, I see this all the time and I have to keep nailing it into everyone's head. You can't just wait for motivation to strike. Unhooked habit number 8 is the guy who unfollows thirst traps, unfollows triggering accounts, removes these triggers from his environment, particularly early in his recovery. Later on, the long-term goal we have is that you can see a thirst trap and it doesn't matter because it doesn't hook you, because you've built up that freedom from within. But in the early days, it's so helpful to unfollow those thirst trap accounts to protect your attention. Unhooked habit number 9. He asks for help and accepts support. He knows that strength comes from connection, not isolation. So the new paradigm that we're moving into as men is understanding that strength comes from real connection, comes from being vulnerable and authentic and having support from your brothers. It doesn't come from being a lone wolf who thinks he's a badass and can do it all himself. It doesn't lead to real success and long-term fulfillment or growth or anything. Unhooked habit number 10 gets real accountability and surrounds himself with people who challenge him. The people who are most successful are the people who get real accountability in their life. They have people who can challenge them and hold them accountable to their goals and aspirations. They have coaches, they have mentors, they have friends who can call them out on their bullshit or who can say, hey, I know you can do better than this, whether it's in sports or athletics or business or relationships or just your daily habits. Finding ways to surround yourself with people who can challenge you to be your best self. Number 11 of the unhooked habits doesn't make excuses and doesn't let the saboteur dictate your actions or drive the bus. Well, the analogy I like to use a lot is who's driving the bus? You know, is it your saboteur? Is it the angry 13-year-old version of yourself who wants to just rebel? Or is it your higher self? Is it your inner leader who's driving the bus? So the type of guy who is successful at this doesn't make excuses or blame other people or circumstances, but says, I'm gonna be the one who makes a decision from my higher self. Unhooked habit number 12 leans into honest and vulnerable conversations. When there is a difficult conversation that needs to be had, if you can be the type of person who proactively seeks that conversation out, that will lead to your success because you won't be out of integrity. There will be nothing you need to hide from or run away from. There's no kind of icky conversations in the back of your mind where you're thinking, man, I really need to talk to this person, but I don't have the courage. So instead, I'm just going to go watch porn, because you've had those conversations. You've gotten them off your plate. Unhooked habit number 13 bounces back fast. One bad day never becomes a bad week. Again, it's okay if you slip up. If you say, yeah, that was data, let me look at it and let me get back on track. More quickly you can get back on track, the better. That is one sign of progress and recovery, is not just how long your streak is, but how quickly you can get back on track after a slip. If it, in the past you would binge and, act out for a whole week before you get back on track. Now it's like, okay, one day. And then it becomes 1 hour. And then it becomes 5 minutes. Oh, I've fallen down a rabbit hole for 5 minutes. Okay, let me get back on track. And then it becomes 30 seconds. You find yourself going down some thirst trap rabbit hole. And 30 seconds later, you wake up and say, what am I doing? This is not how I want to live. And then eventually you get to the point where it's like 1 second or 5 seconds. You say, oh, I see where this is going. That is a sign of recovery. Unhooked habit number 14 takes extreme ownership. Again, you don't blame external factors. You don't blame your stress, your work. You take extreme ownership of your life and say, nobody else is going to come save me. This is not somebody else's responsibility. I am the one who needs to do this work of recovery, and I can't blame anyone else. I've got to do this work. Unhooked habit number 15 is the guy who measures his growth by all these other factors in his life. His alignment, his inner peace, his consistency, his relationships, his physical health, that sense of well-being in life and how everything else in his life is going. Those are the metrics we should be using to measure our success and recovery. Unhooked habit number 16 sees recovery as expansion. Again, this process, it's not about deprivation. You're not giving up something that really brought you real joy and fulfillment or real happiness. You're giving up something that was toxic, that was hurting your life. So seeing recovery, relating to your recovery as, this is something that is nurturing for my soul. This is something that gives me clarity and confidence. I love this recovery. That is the appropriate attitude that will help you be unhooked and live your best life. Finally, number 17, focusing on progress, not perfection. So embracing imperfection and saying, yeah, that's going to happen from time to time. I don't need to be perfect. I just need to keep making progress. That is going to be something that will support you on your journey of recovery. So these are the things I wanted to talk about today because they're just so important, not for the short-term success, but for the long-term success in your recovery. You have got to start looking at which of my habits are hooked habits. What are the things keeping me stuck in my addiction? And which of my habits are the unhooked habits? What are the things that are supporting my recovery, allowing me to move forward, allowing me to heal and have a better relationship with myself? So I hope you actually take some time to analyze your own life and say, how am I living my life? What are the habits that are supporting me? What are the habits that are not supporting me? Because you are your habits. Everything you have, the success in your relationships, your business, your career, your physical health are the result of your habits. One of my favorite quotes comes from some ancient philosopher. He said, we don't rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our training. So make sure that your training, what you do on a daily basis, is supporting you. So that's it for today, folks. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Unhooked. If you did, please leave a review. Give it some love on podcasts, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you're listening. Leave a review, hit the subscribe, share with a friend. Do something to support this channel because it really does help. That's how we grow and that's how we change lives. So signing off from Bangkok. Catch you guys on the next episode.